Because you don't figure it out until later, right?
Didn't figure it out till later.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a bit of a flood, so dealing with it. Had to deal with it. We had a flood.
Yeah, no, it was a good conversation. I'm pleased with the Martin.
So our session has begun. I'm just going to call our group together for the start of our session here. I'm really happy to be with everybody today. It's wonderful that we've got people in person and we've also got people online. We're just going to do a couple of technical things in the background. We've got a few people in the background that we're going to make sure that we've got our panelists are ready and going to be part of our session here. So, do we have the right people that upgraded here, Eliana?
Yeah,
we're looking
all of
for
our panelists are online and our unfortunately Evie isn't here yet.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, wonderful. So I think she's looking like she's going to be coming on very shortly, which is good. So I will start and you'll be looking out for her. Yes, that's right. Okay, the joys of hybrid. We will happily edit out the beginning of the session here. All right, so I think we're going to begin. Hadi, everybody. My name is Margo Parks, and I'm delighted to open up this session, Better Together for Health Research in Northern BC. We're going to have some preambles to our panel, but we're really excited today to be bringing people from across Northern BC, from across BC, to come together to have a really timely conversation about how we can work together to enhance and strengthen our approaches to health research in Northern BC. So we are a session that is online, and my little slides are not advancing with the arrows. It's going to be very tricky. So I wanted to begin with an acknowledgement of the extraordinary context in which we're imagining doing this work. And that context across Northern BC, for those of you that can't be with us here on Lheidli territory, you will be holding in your minds, I hope, the expanse of this northern region. And the reason that that's important is because it's so much a motivation for this session today about being better together in Northern BC. And so we are really delighted that we're hoping that during the course of our preambles, we're going to be joined by a Lheidli elder who will also be grounding us to this particular territory. But just as I begin, and as we all land here in these places and spaces, I want you to hold for a moment a recognition of the extraordinary range of Indigenous territories. These are the First Nation Statement of Intent territories in Northern British Columbia. And it isn't all of the territories that we're working and living and playing on in Northern BC. This is only the ones associated with the province. And there are a lot of overlapping territories, but these are the first peoples, the Indigenous peoples of BC, on whose territory all of this work that we're referring to is unfolding. And that's extremely important as we begin this, as we're undertaking these conversations here in 2022. And because our local context is also going to be informing all of the ways that we work together. So another way of looking and holding in our imagination is the richness of languages of these territories. So before those of us that are newer to these territories arrived, there were deep, rich cultural connections that manifest in multiple different languages. And that's something that is also, I find, incredibly invigorating when we think of the length of time that those cultures, those communities, and the ways in which those interactions with land have created health and well-being in northern BC over millennia. So I am going to weave in an opportunity for our elder to make an introduction when she joins us, if she's able to. She's also, and on the spirit of today's gathering, is also navigating some unexpected health situations. And that's another way of us thinking about our northern BC context today. We're here not only acknowledging the past, the richness of the way in which the past of these territories is influencing how we do our work today, but we're here in a room gathered for the first time for a long time, many of us with masks on that I'm looking at here in the room. Those of you that are in far-flung locations have been navigating COVID-19. Some people are calling this time a polycrisis, whether it's COVID-19, the opioid crisis, the climate change crisis, the fact that all of us are feeling very sensitive to the struggles that are happening in other parts of the world, as well as the struggles that are happening across northern BC, as everybody is dealing with these issues. And so with that context in mind, it's even more important that we come together to be better together. And so I'm here welcoming our session today as not only as a professor in the School of Health Sciences, cross-appointed with the Northern Medical Program and the Division of Medical Sciences, but also I'm really pleased to be here in my capacity as the co-lead of the Health Research Institute. And that's the group that has convened this moment today with our commitment to a vision that's been enacted since 2016, a vision of a world in which healthy individuals, families, and communities live without health inequalities, that we're imagining a more equitable health environment. And we've got a mission that unfolds through a number of features of creating spaces to share and exchange, to convene, to connect, to collaborate in ways that create knowledge, that build knowledge creation, that promote knowledge synthesis and exchange, that help build those connections among researchers, stakeholders, and partners. So this kind of work can only happen together and is based on a foundation of us working in ways that are indeed better together. So I'm going to just flag some of the ways that the Health Research Institute is able to, is manifesting this work already. We do this through activities, and one of the many ways fueled by our Leadership Council, and also with the commitment of members of our Leadership Council, we have a health research seminar series that we do in partnership across campus. And I'm giving a preamble to an exciting session that's coming up on March 17th with our colleagues from Northern Health. But I'm also acknowledging and inviting people online and everybody present to imagine participating in our Health Research Annual General Meeting on April the 13th. And we're looking ahead to a really exciting session each year when we profile our honours students in the health sciences programs, which is happening on April the 21st. So we're delighted that more people are joining us. Welcome, thanks for being here. No, you're very welcome. And we're also welcoming people from across Northern BC and beyond who have joined us online. So with this next moment, I'm going to emphasize the kinds of partnerships that have enabled today to happen. So I mentioned I'm here as a member of the Health Research Institute Leadership Council for many years, more recently with Martin Mccloud, who we'll also hear from later this afternoon, as a co-lead of the Health Research Institute. But the Health Research Institute couldn't exist unless it was connected with partners. And these are some of the partners that have enabled this update today. So this panel that we've convened today is a chance. There's a lot of exciting things happening across the health research landscape in Northern BC. And we're really glad that many of you are going to get a glimpse of those opportunities, and I'm sure be curious and hungry to learn more. So we're going to hear from across a range of groups, and we're really wanting to thank everybody, including the logos that are represented here, UNBC, the Michael Smith Health Research BC Support Unit, partnership with Northern Health, with BC Near, that we're also going to hear from, and the Rural Coordinating Centre of BC. Those are particularly some of the groups represented on our panel, and there is a lot of other groups that have supported the Health Research Institute over time. So I'm just going to move very shortly to give an overview of our panelists, and I'm just going to check whether, can you see? Okay. So we do have here an exciting panel. We've got an exciting array of new key developments that are emerging in our health research landscape. And so shortly we're going to hear briefly, very briefly, from this collection of speakers reflecting a really important partnership work across the board. And we're then going to have an opportunity to hear from discussants who have had long-standing engagements with health research, particularly in Northern BC, from Martin Mccloud, the co-lead of the Health Research Institute, and Nellie Ocap from the Rural Coordinating Centre of BC. So I'm really pleased now. What we are probably going to do is to take a moment, if we are able to bring in some of the people that are joining us as they come along. But I am really delighted now to welcome our first panelist group, which is going to involve, it's Kathy Lewis, our Acting Vice President Research and Innovation at UNBC, and Fraser Bell, who's Vice President Quality and Planning for Northern Health. And they're going to be giving us a glimpse of this very important initiative focused on the UNBC Northern Health Memorandum of Understanding. So Kathy, I understand that you're going to go first, and then we're going to switch the slides over so that Fraser can present. So I'll make room for you, Fraser. And you can stand here and I'll be on the side here.
Great. Yeah, I think Kathy will be presenting the first couple slides, if that's okay.
Did you want to share PowerPoint or anything, Kathy?
Yeah, I think you guys have it already.
Oh, it's here.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
We're tag teaming here.
All right. Whatever.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, can everyone hear me all right?
We can.
Yeah,
to
very
go?
well.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks very much, Margo, for that fantastic introduction to the traditional territories. It always amazes me how many Indigenous communities we have in the North. I am really excited about what I have an opportunity to talk about, which is the Memorandum of Understanding that we have between UNBC and Northern Health. And I started my acting role as VP Research 2 years ago. It's been a really steep learning curve for the area of health for me. It's not my background at all. So I've had an opportunity to learn tons and to work with some pretty fantastic people as we've gone through revisions to this MOU. If I could have the next slide, please.
Is there a way I can do
I
that?
think there is, but it's pressing that these little guys.
Oh, I can do that. I bet I can.
All right, Fraser, you're in control. So just a bit of history. So the original MOU was initiated in 2010, and it went through one revision in 2018. And when I started VPR, we were just entering into the whole pandemic, and it was really time to have another look at the MOU and how we were working with Northern Health. And so we started into some revisions, and those are based on earlier commitments that were made under the original MOU and some of the fantastic achievements that were also that happened under that MOU. What we wanted to do, however, was recognize some of the emerging opportunities, such as the need and interest in doing more clinical type research, some of the new technologies that are coming out there and how they may support patients and communities that are far away, patients that are aging and so on. We also recognize that there were some changing contexts. The pandemic was one of the big ones, but there's also other ones, such as the In Plain Sight report and systemic racism within the healthcare system and within the educational systems that we also need to be working on. So our collaborative efforts are really trying to reflect that shared commitment that we both have to enhancing the health through collaborative integration of practice, education, and research. Next slide, please, Fraser.
Just down. Did that go? I said I lied. I cannot do it, Kathy.
This is.
Is that not?
There we go.
Okay.
There we go. So both UNBC and Northern Health have as one of the main driving forces the commitment to improve the quality of life of people who live in the North. And through this MOU, we think that we can do that by increasing knowledge and developing capacity through creativity and innovation. So what can we do to bring research into practice? And how can we have practice inform research? And how can we drive more opportunities and innovation through that relationship? We also have a shared commitment to involve people, patients in particular, through all stages of research so that they can have a loud say in their own healthcare and the work that we're doing to try to improve health outcomes for people. And then we also have a shared commitment to the cross-institutional integration of practice, education, and research. These three things are already highly integrated. When we talk about research, we talk about what we learn and how that informs our education and how that informs our practice. And it's really important when both parties recognize that we need to do as much as we can to work together to integrate those three things. And I think it's over to you, Fraser.
Okay, I can do it fine when it's mine. Yeah, so we just at the outset of developing this memorandum of understanding, and I must say that I've been in this role since 2008, I guess. So was involved since 2010 when we began this, and it's been nothing but a pleasure all the way through. The collaboration and the relationships that have developed over time have been extraordinary, and I think they've really reflected the principles that we've espoused maybe more clearly in this MOU, but it's really been the way we've been working together all the way along. Beginning with collaboration, respect, value, but I really wanted to, I like the open, transparent, and frank communication. This group has been phenomenal at that kind of frank communication. It's just sort of saying, this is not landing for me well, let's work through it. And I've actually not really experienced the kind of relationship and kind of open and honest relationship that this one has had in many other walks of life that I've been engaged in. So it is something special. Respectful engagement of Indigenous partners, absolutely. Really needing to enhance the recognition of the need for this in the MOU. Inclusive environment where work is done not for but to, and then regular communication. We're at a point where we are extremely proud of what we're doing and what we've done, and we need to communicate it more. In some ways, it's the best kept secret in the North, and we've got to stop it from being that. Just a little bit on the structure that we've established for the Memorandum of Understanding, and I don't know if everybody appreciates how exciting this top piece is. But when the president of the university and the CEO of Northern Health agree to come together on a regular basis to oversee a relationship, that's a really good sign. It's a sign for those of us who are trying to enact the relationship going forward, that we know that we have the support and actually encouragement of our presidents and in fact our boards. And then there's a steering committee with good broad representation, really working to move the Memorandum of Understanding along. So this is not meant for you to be able to read. It's just something I wanted to show you the structure of. This time around, we've not left it at a memorandum, just a statement of relationship in the MOU. In the past, that's kind of where we've stopped. We've said we want to do some work together, and we will go forth and do so. What we wanted to do this time is be a whole lot more specific about where we are going to do work together. One thing we've learned is if you're not clear in what you're trying to accomplish with partners, particularly partners outside of your own organization, it's really hard. And so we want to be very specific about that. So the way we've structured it is just an overall mission statement at the top, which I'll go into in a second. Some strategic priorities. So there's 4 strategic priorities. For each of those strategic priorities, we've defined the specific goals we're trying to achieve together. Lots of stuff we're doing individually and that carries on, but really trying to define the things that we want to focus on together. And we've even gone as far as then to say, what's our action plans and our measures to know whether we're having a success or not. And so this is far more clear and comprehensive, I guess, as far as the plan we're actually trying to follow than we've been before. And it's been very exciting, and it's reflective of the kinds of contexts and changes that have happened that Kathy spoke to earlier. We're actually in a situation where it's just become so clear we have got to work together. We have so much advantage if we partner more than try to do things all by ourselves. So really just then, oh, you just got to push harder. Just to blow up that diagram, just the top part, I'm not hiding the bottom part, the actual details, but when you see the details, you'll find that they're really just a deconstruction of these priorities. So there's not a lot gained by kind of running through each, but except I'd take up a lot more time than I already am. But the first part really is that mission statement. And Kathy's mentioned this a bit before, but I really want to flag the integration of practice, education, and research. It's the academic health science sort of mantra or triad. And if you haven't really heard that or thought about it, it is so motivating and exciting. If you are integrated in the way you provide service or care, the way you do research and create new knowledge, and the way you educate or disseminate and continue to experience new knowledge, incredible value can be gained. And so when you look at the priorities underneath, you'll see that they are really true to that. First off, health human resources. We have got to work together in a very explicit way to train, hire, develop, and move people along in their careers through the North. We have a golden opportunity to partner and be very explicit about that relationship. What areas do we need training? How many? How do we need to develop? What new practices do we need incorporated into that training? What do you know as a university around best practices that we can incorporate into care? Really important. The next piece is that sort of cycle of creation of knowledge, dissemination of knowledge, and mobilization of knowledge. So we want to get a clearer cycle going. We do very, very well as a partnership already, but we can keep going and develop that generation of knowledge, that then translation of knowledge into practice. Extremely exciting as well. Priority 3 is really just some things. Let's get some of the barriers out of the way that we've run into. People have tried to collaborate and run into challenges. I'll be the first to admit we have trouble getting researchers' data in a timely fashion from Northern Health. True confessions, and we need to improve that. Those are the kinds of things that we want to work on going forward. And again, back to the frank conversation, if researchers tell us this is a problem, we can respond. And the last one is enhance cultural safety and humility and reduce Indigenous specific racism. This is an area we really also have to be clearer about and more systemic about the way we educate, the way we research, and the way we mobilize knowledge and care for patients and provide service. All has to be reflective of this. So why don't we figure out how to do it together? So those are the points we wanted to make around our memorandum of understanding. Again, very exciting. You did you saw a draft marked across that. I might have turned everything off. Did I turn off the whole power? You know, this is draft. We haven't yet approved it or had approval from the Oversight Committee, the CEOs, but they're certainly definitely along with us. So we'll change some words, but we certainly won't change the sentiment of the MOU. So thank you very much. I'll remask and get out of here.
Okay,
Is that okay?
yeah, thanks so much. Kathy, and hold for a second, because I'm just going to invite, I'm really pleased as we had our, earlier when we were introducing the extraordinary array of territories that we're landing in, and we were speaking of the importance of this work on Plate Latine territory. We're really pleased now to be able to just have a couple of words from Elder Edie Frederick. We're just going to have to make sure that we can bring her screen up, so I'm going to get Matt's help with that. And Edie, do you want to try to just test your microphone, and then I'll introduce you properly?
Hey,
Wonderful.
can you hear
We
me?
can hear you. We can, and we can see you. You've just joined us in the room. What a pleasure to have you here. So I'm really delighted to be able to. You've got a whole crowd of people waving at you now. She can't quite see you, but I can.
In spirit.
In spirit, but that was a really lovely sentiment, actually, and it's actually a very, very appropriate sentiment as we welcome Elder Edie Frederick, because one of my great pleasures of living and learning and working on Plate Latine territory has been working with elders in these territories. I showed up earlier the map of the language groupings across northern BC, and Elder Frederick is one of our precious DACALT speakers, which is something that has been always such a joy to experience. And every time, one of the things that stands out for my interactions with Edie is that we always end up laughing, oh, and she leaves. That's funny. She's back. So Edie, we can see you on the screen. It's just it was so kind of you amidst everything you're juggling and the care that you're giving to people in your own family to join us today and to just land us in these territories. I thank you so much for it. The floor is yours, Edie, and you're with us in the room.
Natalia and Margot for inviting me. I'm very honored to do this, and thank you for the acknowledgement. I'm always humbled when I get these requests to do these things, because I come from back in the day when it wasn't cool to be First Nations. Like, yeah, I've seen the time of change, and what I see now just makes my heart go all mushy. So on behalf of my nation of Plate Latine, our elders, our chief and council, and more importantly, our younger people, we welcome you to our ancestral lands. Tabe Zahundi Wasatel and Gain Jantle Nausadel and Daila Yata Tabe Nebahuncha, Tabe Nebahuncha, Naste Ba Inden. So what I just said is what everybody is talking about is very important, and you're paving the way to the future. You're, like the last speaker just said, like that one wall just came down between Northern Health and UNBC. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Health is so important, and the research that everybody's putting into it, it's so important, and so we can have a better quality of life. Our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, the future generations will have a better life. To base Natalia for inviting me to do this. I'm just totally speechless. Natalia, I would say.
Natalia Elder McIntosh, Elder, that I was just thinking of the many elders that how lucky we are to have, but
Not
Edie,
Macintosh.
no, that's right, Edie, Frederick. And I was, as you were speaking, I was thinking of the many people that we've heard on UNBC of the breaking down of walls between this institution here on campus. I was recently in the Rotunda Gallery with the beautiful canoe that Robert Frederick carved, and that you have a presence. I took a group of students into the Rotunda Gallery to kind of be in the presence of that history. And you've brought that into the room today with your presence, with the language, with the Dakelf language, which is so appreciated. And Snachali, oh, and you?
I'd just like to mention in the fall time, the rotunda will not be called the rotunda anymore. It will be called the Robert Frederick Gallery.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful. So that's a wonderful example of the kinds of things that can happen as walls and opportunities change on campus. So Snachalia, this word that means you honor us, you have honored us today, Elder Frederick, and I'm so appreciative of you making this time. So thank you. Yeah. And so we're feeling the momentousness of this kind of work when we imagine that at the confluence of these two great rivers, the Fraser and the Nechako, the Lheidli T'enneh, the T'enneh, the people of the Lheidli, the confluence of these two rivers, that's a reminder that we need to manifest that, how the coming together of things so that we can be more than the sum of our parts. And so the rest of our panelists are going to be giving more glimpses of that. Thank you, Edie, for being with us. We're going to move on with the presentations, and I wish you and your family all the very best. Snachalia. And thanks, Julia. We'll pull up your slides as well. So next, I'm going to let Matt do that while I introduce our next speaker. We've got two people joining us for this next stage of the presentation as well, again, representing the kinds of collaboration that can happen when we move through into these new opportunities. So Julia Bickford has been in Northern BC over the last year or so, and we were amazed and confused by COVID kind of just messing with our understanding of how much time has passed or hasn't passed. But what I've been delighted to witness since Julia has joined Northern Health is this sense of the team of research and evaluation capacity expanding at Northern Health. So we're so glad to have you with us, Julia. And she's going to be joined by Mark Barnes, the Director of Research and Innovation here at UNBC. So I'll let you, here is the magic arrow that you need to press very hard, and we'll leave you to work through the slides. Thanks, Julia.
Thank you so much, Margo. So I joined our Northern Health about 2 years ago, almost exactly the end of February 2020, just as COVID was starting. And I do remember during that first week meeting with Martha and Rachel Wells, who is at the HRI, and obviously with Mark Barnes and Twyla, and more recently Michelle and Leanna, which has been really great. So I really do echo what Kathy and Fraser have said about it. Really is a unique partnership, and it starts at the very beginning when we first, are onboarded in our institutions. We are working together from the very beginning, which I think is really special and very unique in our context.
I'll just get you on the slide.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. So I just wanted to share a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing, obviously in response to some of the challenges that we've heard from researchers about, being able to do their research and wanting to be able to provide support so that we can enable research in the North that matters for the North. So our goal in our department in Northern Health is really to support an organizational culture which encourages, expects, and supports that integration of research and evidence into everyday practice. So we want to support our staff and physicians and patients, and obviously, as you're talking today with our academic partners as well, so that we can engage in research activities that really advance the priorities of the North and our communities. So in that vein, we have had, I've had the extraordinary privilege of working with some fantastic people, some of whom are in the audience here today in person, who've come all the way from different parts of the province to be here. So this is just in alphabetical order, but really a new team. When I first came on, all of a sudden everyone was seconded to other roles. And so it's been really a delight over the last year to build this team. So we have Esther Alonso Prito, who is our new research ethics lead, and she also does clinical ethics. Marcelo Bravo, who's here in the audience, who's our lead for knowledge translation and also the co-lead of the BC Support Unit Northern Center with Vienna Garraway. Ron Klossing, who also started this summer as our research and privacy lead. So really important role to play in all of our work. Catherine St. George just started in September, so she's our regional manager for clinical research. We have Diana Texan, who's our administrative assistant, a really important role behind the scenes. We always want to acknowledge her role as well. And then there's another role which Sandra Barnes was in, and it's currently vacant, but this is our regional lead for research and KT in the long-term care sector. And I just color-coded them because I wanted to acknowledge that a lot of these were started through funding from other sources that have been incredibly important to us. So what was the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research funded all of the positions you can see in red there. We have funding from the BC Support Unit Northern Center for SPORE initiated SPORE research, and then Michael Smith Health Research BC as well. And then I also wanted to just comment that this is the team that I have directly working with me within Northern Health, but there's roles across Northern Health. It's really a network that we need to support research. When we think of that learning health system and the idea of a system, we need people with a really vast skill set. So we have our lead for person and community engagement, our library services, finance, contracts, legal. The ID hub speaks to the data piece that we were talking about. And obviously, really importantly, is our operational leaders. So people to recognize that research is important in practice, from day-to-day practice. So, and then really quickly, I'm almost done. Just wanted to give you a sense of some of the key things that we are working on and planning over the next year. So again, our ethics and operational approval process, which includes privacy and data sharing agreements and all of that good stuff, really wanting to streamline that and make sure that that's really clear and transparent. Obviously, the clinical research capacity and infrastructure, which Paul is going to speak to shortly, has been really important and really exciting to grow that capacity in the North. And then research engagement and knowledge translation. This is obviously really important to us as well, making sure that all this great research we're doing is informing practice and policy and really making change for the better for patients in the North. And just a shameless plug here, I think it was already said at the beginning, but Marcelo and I and a couple of other teammates are going to be presenting on March 17th in the HRI seminar series. So please do come join us if you want to learn more about what we're doing. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Julia. Questions bubbling up in the chat, which we're going to come back to during the Q&A and the panel. But Mark, I think we're handing over to you, and we're going to pop up another slide deck as we go here. Oh, you don't know, that's right, Mike doesn't have one. So Mark, we're handing over to you.
Thanks, Margo. Thanks, everyone. Really excited to be here today. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Mark Barnes. I'm Director of Research and Innovation up here at UNBC, and I have the pleasure of working with the fantastic group that has already presented before me and a number of the other folks that will follow me. So the Office of Research and Innovation, we support research across the institution in three main ways: fundraising, outreach and community engagement, and also regulatory compliance. We have seen tremendous growth in health research up here in the North. So what we've been doing over the past few years, working with our partners, is to try and look at ways that we can enhance those supports and perhaps shift some of the existing workload and resources that we have to better serve the health researchers, not only here at UNBC, but within Northern Health as well. So one of the recent updates that we made was we converted one of our research project officers that used to oversee not only the health portfolios, but also the social sciences and humanities portfolio, to really have a strong focus on just health. And so we added a position to kind of set those disciplines up so we could really focus a little bit more time on ensuring that we had those supports in place to set our researchers up for success. You know, we're seeing a lot of requests come through to have you know, fundraising supports, whether it's traditional research fundraising through applying to funding agencies or working with some of our very generous donors to the institution. So that's one key area that we're really building some capacity to better serve our health researchers. Probably most importantly, I feel, is our outreach and community engagement opportunities that we're really starting to expand on. As has been mentioned a number of times, this would not be possible without collaboration. And I think a renewed focus to ensure that we are working together and that we do bring folks together. It's been quite a delight to see the progress. I think as clinical comes on board, we will see more of a potential draw from our expertise within our ethics board, but that capacity to support clinical research ethics is still kind of in the development phase. But we look forward to working with our partners in building that very much needed capacity up here in the north. So Margo, that was the update that I wanted to share. I mean, there's many other exciting things that are happening here in the north to really drive the evolving clinical research and health research landscape, but happy to take questions as they come up from the group.
That's great. Thanks so much, Mark. I'm glad that you're available for the Q&A because there may be other questions. Just going back to one of the things that Elder Frederick mentioned about the next generations, I've been really pleased to hear about some of the imagining the next generation of health researchers coming through with some of the Indigenous education initiatives that are starting to come through across campus and new kinds of partnerships. And that kind of laddering to me is really exciting, that we're not just talking about people that are already in our systems as researchers, but starting to look ahead to next generation. So definitely a connection there with the future. Thanks again, Mark. So our next panelist is Dr. Paul Winwood. I'm really delighted to be able to invite him up in his capacity as Associate VP with the Division of Medical Sciences. Very exciting developments with the Northern Centre for Clinical Research. And I'll let you pull up that slide deck. Thank you. Paul, if you stand in the centre here, once you get in place, they'll be able to see you. Right. That's it.
So thank you, Margo, and thank you to Elder Frederick for that lovely and warm welcome to your traditional and unceded territories. So I'm going to talk today about this new initiative, the Northern Centre for Clinical Research, which we're going to open next month with a bit of luck. And this truly is built out of partnership, the sort of partnerships that we're talking about today. It's a tripartite equal partnership between UNBC, Northern Health, and UBC. And this is our vision statement. And you'll see that it's a centre that fosters clinical and medical life sciences research, leading to new technologies, processes, and practices in the northern, remote, rural, and Indigenous contexts. And in particular, we hope that it will increase accessibility to and participation in research opportunities for the people of Northern British Columbia, which has been a huge, huge deficit up to now. But I was going to introduce this slide by saying, so why do we need it? Well, actually, that's one reason we need it, to enable people in Northern British Columbia to participate in clinical research. But just to give a bit of context, we do have a well-established group of health researchers in the North, both within the programs that I oversee, which is the Northern Medical Program and the Physical Therapy Program, and now the Occupational Therapy Program, but also in health sciences and in nursing and other programs. And we have some very successful researchers who, in my opinion, punch well above their weight, particularly given the context and resources of Northern BC. But clinical research has been a real struggle, and Fraser has spoken to this. And some of our researchers have done some really good clinical research, but it's been a real struggle for them to be able to do it because, frankly, We haven't had a culture of clinical research. We haven't had the resources and the infrastructure to support it. Similarly, life sciences and biomedical research, which is on a continuum with clinical research, hasn't really had a home and hasn't had a connection with clinical research in the North. And it really is a continuum from bench to bedside. And so the two areas that this centre are focusing on are clinical research and biomedical research. And the time is right. You've just heard from Fraser and from Julia. Northern Health has invested hugely in research infrastructure. That is all very recent, and actually credit to Fraser for driving that and credit to Julia for making it happen. And right now, there are provincial and federal consultations going on to improve clinical research. And in fact, some of the emergent themes really resonate with me, and I hope with you: decentralization, agility and harmonization for clinical research, and modernizing regulatory processes and transparency are some of the themes that come out. So the time is right. And remember, there's an initiative, Research is Care, Care is Research, that is going on in BC, which is basically saying that research should be embedded in care. And so it seems to me that this is the right time to do this, and it's a very exciting time. So I've spoken a little bit about the research focus. It's clinical research and biomedical sciences that are relevant to northern, rural, remote, and Indigenous people. Importantly, it's going to be responsive to emerging needs and available resources, and we're expecting it to grow and evolve over time. We're not going to be able to deliver everything we would like to deliver on day one, and we do need to be responsive to local needs. And so, you know, the way that we envisage it now may change over time. It's going to be physically located initially at UHNBC. We have a commitment to some office space. We have common meeting areas, access to a dry lab, and to clinical areas that we can use for the research centre. It won't all be in one location initially. And more importantly, it's supposed to serve the North, and we hope to have satellite centres in time across the North. It is open to all faculty and partner employees in Northern BC who have research interests that align with the centre, that's to say clinical and life sciences research. So what will it look like? This is a diagram that Julia put together. Actually, I've got to credit her with that. One thing I want to say is that the focus of this centre is that it will be faculty or researcher facing. And so we have here, this is our researcher who might come to the centre with an idea for research. Well, what can we offer them? First thing is we'll need to find out is whether their research aligns with the Centre for Research. And if it doesn't, then we will send them off to see our partners. And probably the most important partner is going to be the HRI, who is effectively a network of health research activities in the North. So if they're interested in health systems research, then we would send them to see Margo and say, Margo, can you help them out? If we feel that their research idea is something that we can support in the NCCR, then we would be able to help them with things like study design, helping them get through the ethical and institutional approvals. And you've just heard from Julia all the infrastructure that she's been putting in place to support that. Through the regulatory approvals, we can help them with contracts and finance and study coordination. To take that a bit further then, what would be the impact and goals? First of all, we hope that we will provide a collaborative space, not just physical, but in our mindsets for researchers interested in clinical and life sciences in the North, that we will promote clinical and biomedical research in the North, that we will be able to enhance health equity by enabling people in the North to participate in clinical trials. We'll provide that infrastructure support that I've just been talking about, to provide the institutional platform built on our partnerships that will enable researchers to apply for grants and to disseminate their knowledge. We hope to provide a series of seminars, workshops, and journal clubs that will work in tandem with the HRI to provide research training opportunities and mentoring, and to be able to share our resources across the different institutions and organisations and partners in Northern BC. We are about to employ a research associate and a coordinator, and would enable access to researchers to be able to use those coordinators and research associates, and ultimately to help embed research in healthcare delivery in the North. Just got one more slide. So this is a slide of our governance, just to give you some idea what it looks like. And we have an oversight governance committee that includes senior leadership from each of the 3 equal partners. There will be an advisory committee which will involve, which will have membership from many stakeholders, including the membership and across Northern BC, including RCCBC, including the HRI. We're planning to have an Indigenous Advisory Committee and a Patient and Family Advisory Committee, and then of course the centre operations, and we will have a centre director and manager, which actually will be the same person, Catherine St. George, who's the research manager for Northern Health. Very, very importantly, there will be very strong linkage with the Northern Health clinical research operations that Julia has spoken about. And critically, the centre director and Julia will be needing to work very closely together to ensure the success of research in Northern Health and in that clinical environment in the North. So I'll stop there, and thank you very much for having me and listening.
Well, we've got 2 more. It is a sense of an action-packed research space here in Northern BC with all of these, and you can see why this sense of an opportunity to get a sense of the whole was really timely. So we are aware that we've got a flux of different people that are coming and going, but we are going to be taking noting of your questions and coming around to those of the Q&A. Our next speaker, we've emphasised the importance of the territories in which we're working on, the Indigenous context of Northern BC, but there's also an enormous opportunity ahead for strengthening and deepening capacity for Indigenous-led research and next generation Indigenous researchers. And so in that spirit, we're really pleased to have one of the team members from the Network Environments for Indigenous Health Research in BC. Margo Greenwood was really looking forward to being with us today. Many of you would have heard her presentation, and if you haven't, I would strongly encourage you to check it out on our Health Research Institute website. She did a fantastic overview of the National Collaborating Centre for Indigenous Health recently. And Margo was also going to be speaking to the importance of efforts such as Near BC. So Tara, I really appreciate you joining us to give us a glimpse, and we all know that there's some way to go in terms of us seeing the full capacity we would like to see in that regard in the North, and that's something that certainly as a co-lead of the HRI, I'm really strongly committed to deepening and renewing and continuing our commitment in that regard. But over to you, Tara, to give us a glimpse.
Thank you. I do have some slides, but I'll just introduce myself first. Hi, everybody. My name is Tara Erb, and I am the network coordinator for the research grant BC Near, British Columbia Network Environment for Indigenous Health Research. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm calling in today from Kwanghan-speaking territories, Victoria, BC, and this is where I work and live. It's also where our BC Near offices are housed, but we serve the province of BC. I myself am a member of Moose Cree First Nation and French, and I've been the network coordinator for the BC Near since it was launched in April 2020. So I'll just get my first slide, please.
I'll advance them. So Tara, I'm going to advance your slides for you. No, it's the next one. Yes, that's it. Yeah. So but where your screen slides are just coming up now. We're sharing your screen, and I'll be your slide advancer.
Sure, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also trained, Margo, if you do.
Brilliant. Such collaborative spirit, Fraser. I love it. So if I need help, I'll call on you. So here we go. I'll back over to you, Tara.
Thank you. So we have many partners, and as we're just starting into our third year, more and more partners are coming, such as Michael Smith Health Research BC and Research Ethics BC. But our core partners are First Nations Health Authority, Métis Nation BC, and BC Association of Aboriginal Friendship Centers. So these community-led organizations are leading health and wellness research initiatives across BC. And there is representation from each of those partners on our governing council, as well as Indigenous academics, trainees. So there's a few youth on our governing councils and Indigenous professionals. Next slide, please. We honor our elders and their leadership. So our elders are Elder Roberta Price, Elder Barb Hume, and Elder Jerry Ullman. In privileging Indigenous voices and lived experiences, as well as centering cultural knowledge, our council elders are actively involved in all decision-making regarding BC Senior policies, programs, and activities. Next slide, please. The BC Senior program is generously supported by CIHR. This is a 5-year research grant with the potential to renew twice. It represents the largest single investment ever from the Government of Canada for Indigenous health research, totaling over $100 million if renewed. There are 9 years across Canada, and the BC Senior itself serves over 300 ICCOs. So I say this term a lot. ICCOs stands for Indigenous Communities, Collectives, and Organizations. So we very intentionally use this inclusive acronym. So the ICCOs include almost 200 First Nations, almost 40 Métis chartered communities, 25 friendship centers, and many, many other collectives and organizations. To date, the BC Senior Network has over 200 registered members, and membership includes ICCOs, Indigenous academics and professionals such as healthcare, Indigenous trainees, grads and postdocs, as well as allies. And our collective goal is to increase and enhance Indigenous-led health research in BC and Canada through developing research infrastructure, facilitating and supporting Indigenous people in leading health research and knowledge sharing, providing research-related funding, develop and support research capacity as well as capacity bridging, enhance awareness and relevance of Indigenous health research, facilitate and support ethical and culturally safe research partnerships, and engage in provincial, national, and international partnerships. Next slide, please. We have funding programs to support the research activities of Indigenous trainees and ICCOs. So our last scholarship funding call was 2021. We just closed our most recent one, so those are under review right now. But we funded 10 Indigenous doctoral students and 7 Indigenous master's students in BC, totaling almost $450,000 in trainee funding. I would like to acknowledge that over 300,000 of that came from the generous contributions of Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research, now part of Health Research BC, UVic, the Indigenous Mentorship Program of the Pacific Northwest, and as well as UNBC. Recently, we awarded $130,000 in BC in the form of research development grants and knowledge sharing and mobilization grants. So this was our first ICCO funding call, because in the first year or two, there was COVID, so we didn't have them, but it was really successful. And the research development grants themselves are valued at $10,000 each, and the knowledge sharing and mobilization grants are valued at $5,000 each. And the total budget for our ICCO funding over the 5 years is $650,000. But if renewed, the total budget is almost $2 million for ICCO-led research activities in BC. Next slide, please. The BC Senior strongly adheres to research principles of Ocap. So research and research data is owned, controlled, accessed, and possessed by ICCOs at all times. And we value self-determination, Indigenous knowledges and ethics, Indigenous and decolonizing methodologies, holistic knowledge, Indigenous cultural safety and equity. We enact our principles and values and research, as well as facilitate a supportive environment for Indigenous-led health and wellness research through our Indigenous health research facilitators. We know that key to ICCO-led research development and knowledge sharing is relationship building over time. So we have 5 facilitators, and those are our lovely 5 facilitators across by region to build research relationships with ICCOs of BC and support them through all the research processes and beyond. The facilitators are full-time positions that provide hands-on support to ICCOs who wish to prepare for health research, which includes assisting with writing grant applications, capacity bridging, connecting ICCOs to partnerships, or developing resources, and many other things. I'd like to say for the North region, Indigenous student Laura McNabb-Coombs, student at UNBC, is the facilitator for the North. As part of her role in supporting ICCO research activities research activities in the North, Laura has to work with the cultural and geographic diversity of Northern BC, which does include equity considerations of how remote communities may be disproportionately impacted by resources and access to those resources, as well as acknowledging and addressing specific health disparities in the North. For example, the health impacts of resource extraction and resource development. So as Laura continues to engage and build relationships, we hope to learn more about how the BCNIR and others can better facilitate a supportive research environment for Northern ICCOs. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are very grateful for the SPORE, who co-funds all of these positions over the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So I created this Wordle using the keywords submitted by ICCOs in their funding applications to the BCNIR. So these words came directly from their application. So while each project is unique, place-based, and autonomous, where firmly research is by the community and for the community, there is a common underlying theme within the keywords and the applications that characterized these ICCO-led projects as strength-based, culturally grounded, and self-determined. So the BCNIR and our partners, we look forward to continuing to fund and support the ICCOs of BC. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tara. I can see people scribbling things down. I think there's going to be questions coming up in the panel, but I'm going to move us along to hear from our next speaker, who is Sterling Bryan. We're so pleased to have you here with us. We're excited to hear a little bit more about some of the new developments with the Michael Smith Health Research BC and how it relates to the North. And we're really pleased to have the Chief Scientific Officer of Michael Smith Health Research BC joining us today. So over to you, Brian.
Thanks. Sterling's the first name.
I'm calling people the wrong names all the way through. Fraser and I can trade off on who did the most embarrassing things today. But over to you, Sterling.
I'll do the introductions, you do the slides.
Okay, that works.
Thanks very much, everyone. So I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm coming from the offices of Health Research BC, which are in Vancouver. So I want to acknowledge and thank the Coast Salish peoples whose ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory is where I work, and express gratitude to the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So what I wanted to do today, I don't have any slides. I'm just going to speak, and happy to obviously answer questions. Is just give you a bit of an overview of where we are with our new organization, Health Research BC. You may have heard today actually was a really important day for health research in the province. There was an announcement of funding as part of the provincial budget. So the funding announcement happened today. So we are in a position where we have received over 100 million over the next 3 years to support health research in BC moving forward. And just want to give a very big thank you to obviously to the provincial government for its commitment to health research in this province and at this time, particularly difficult time, obviously. I'll talk a little bit about the consolidation that has happened. I'm using the phrase that consolidation is so last year because that obviously did happen last year. October 2021 is when we did successfully bring together the BC Academic Health Science Network and the Michael Smith Foundation for Health Research. So I want to give kudos to Tara for getting everything correct. We are now Michael Smith Health Research BC, and yeah, people obviously struggle with the name, but hopefully that'll soon be rolling off the tongues as we move forward. We've got a new board that is in place, and your very own Jeff Payne. I don't know if Jeff is in the audience, but Jeff sits as a member of the new board, and thank him for that. It's actually a transition board. This is a transition time as we've created this new organization. So it's a board that'll be in place for 2 years, and then we will see change on the membership of the board. The transition board has, for the very first time, got lived experience. So we do have a patient who brings that lived experience perspective to the board, and that's Sunny Liu, who resides on the island, and yeah, maybe someone who you've come across. Strategic planning is an activity for 2022, and that'll be led by the board. It's not going to be starting from scratch. We have strategic plans from both founding organizations, so it's about bringing those together. In some ways, I can just give you a sense of like the core activities or the core components of the new organization, just to give some reassurance as well as to give some indication of future directions. So obviously one of the core activities is going to continue to be providing research grants and awards. So the tradition of the foundation is going to be continued, and obviously the tradition has typically been on talent development, and that's certainly going to be something that we continue with over the course of next year. So we've obviously got the various competitions relating to talent development that will continue, and we hope to expand obviously the competition offerings. The second piece, the second component, is building and supporting research system infrastructure. So we do have 3 operating units within Health Research BC, which were the operating units that previously existed in the Academic Health Science Network. So the BC Support Unit, which I'll talk a bit more about, Research Ethics BC, and Clinical Trials BC remain as core operating units within the new organization. The third component piece is enhancing scientific excellence. So we want to make sure that we are in a position to support the conduct of high quality health research in British Columbia. And we've got a tradition within the support unit, at least, of supporting methods research and actually providing an opportunity for strengthening of research methods, especially in a BC context. So we want to continue with that. And then the final piece, the fourth one, is strengthening research and knowledge mobilization in BC's health systems. So that emphasis on knowledge translation and implementation of research. So I'll just speak briefly to some examples, but I guess the overarching thing I wanted to emphasize is the importance of this new agency, this new health research agency, as being a truly provincial agency. So I think we want to make sure that we are and continue to provide support to health research throughout British Columbia, and obviously in the north as well as other parts of the province. Just as a few examples, so the BC Support Unit is obviously a critical piece for us. We've We're just coming to the end of phase 1, the first 5 years of the support unit, and now transitioning to phase 2. So we have that opportunity to continue to see through the bringing of the voices of lived experience of patients and the public into health research. So we're going to be working on that through until 2027, which is very exciting to have that opportunity. And we've always operated the BC Support Unit as a truly provincial agency with regional centres. So as was mentioned previously, the regional centre in the north has been a huge success, and we want to obviously continue to support the success of regional centres, and the north has funding now through until 2027 for the Northern Regional Centre of the Support Unit. And we are working, as Tara mentioned, with BC NEAR. So Indigenous Health Research is part of phase 2 for Support Unit, and we've signed a memorandum of understanding between the Support Unit and the BC NEAR. The long-term care quality initiative was indicated by Julia. So I think that just gives us an example again of us working at a provincial level. So we funded a research practice lead in each region, and we're committed to continuing that work with a focus on supporting implementation of high quality research into to drive improvement in this sector in particular, which of course is a sector that's been hit very hard by the pandemic, and certainly is a sector where improvement, I think, is long overdue. And then the final one I wanted just to highlight was work we're doing with Clinical Trials BC. So the provincial government has asked us to do a visioning exercise relating to clinical trials for British Columbia. And that's something that we're engaged in at the moment. There's a consultation process happening, and I would welcome the views from the north of what clinical trials should look like. I mean, one of the things that we're trying to do as a frame for this visioning work on clinical trials in British Columbia is think about the comparative advantage that we have within BC to do clinical trials. So what can we do well, and what should we focus on when it comes to clinical trials? And I always point to, we should be if we wanted to do clinical trials looking at issues relating to care delivery in rural and remote areas, then it seems to me that we've got a pretty impressive test bed to conduct such trials. So thinking about where we can have a comparative advantage in BC for things like clinical trials is certainly something that we're trying to weave into the way we're thinking about this visioning work. So I'll stop at this point, but I'm sticking around and happy to answer questions at any point.
Thanks so much, Sterling. We are going to now move swiftly along to a chance to have a couple of initial responses. Then we're going to make sure we've got a bit of time for questions and answers. There's already some bubbling up in the chat box. So I'm really delighted now to invite our colleague and the founding co-lead of the Health Research Institute, Dr. Martin Mccloud, to offer some discussing remarks.
Thanks very much. It is just delightful to hear these new initiatives that are coming up and the developing ones designed to support health research. Now, you'll notice that all of them include both the creation and the translation of knowledge. And that knowledge in Northern BC has always been knowledges, different kinds of knowledge understood in its broadest sense. In 1994, I joined UNBC, a university that was clearly attempting to live its stated goal of in the North for the North. The first research project I heard about was one that was starting up. It was a tri-council funded and it was at that time researchers were doing their very best individually to work with communities and work with other organizations. And that one happened to be a study by Lito Aracino, a soils researcher, Canada Research Chair in Soil and Environmental Sciences. And he involved Dana Edge, our first nursing faculty member, who was also a nurse practitioner. And they were studying the many aspects of health in Lake Babine. And those that study linked the environmental, the clinical, and some of the health services aspect. So that tradition of interprofessional and interdisciplinary research, so solidly set at UNBC, is continuing and thriving amazingly now. 2005, by that time, the researchers were really trying to get together to get a collective in some way. We tried and tried, but finally, it was the Memorandum of Understanding in 2010 that gave the spark that moved us forward to the Health Research Institute. And the HRI was identified, and it decided that it was going to include all of the health researchers, anybody who said they were doing health research, either as researchers, as faculty members, as students. And in the biomed, clinical, social and environmental determinants of health, Indigenous health, and health services and policy. And that is the basis upon, and what Margo mentioned earlier, that the HRI is here today. Now, the HRI has provided services and made linkages with researchers and with partners right across the North ever since that time. It's not done the kind of job that it's needed to for the clinical and the life sciences biomed folks, as it has more successfully with the others. So we're delighted to be able to now see the clinical research finally get the kind of support that's necessary. So it's exciting to hear all of these. We've done partnerships in Northern Simulation Center, on the Rural Coordinating Center you're going to hear next, and others. We've got that solid base, and there's ways to go forward. So how can I get involved? How can I get support? What kinds, where do I go and what do I do? The HRI is here to help make those connections with all of these initiatives that you're hearing about. So I welcome people to, all you need to do is make connections, and Leanna is the person to start that with. So the questions hopefully will come, and thank you very much.
So Nellie, we've got you now on, you're on a screen with everybody on the big screen. We're going to come around to you for some initial thoughts, and then while you're speaking, I'm just going to invite our panelists to come up and sit here at the front table, and we'll get ready for our Q&A. So Nellie, over to you.
Thank you, Margo. Hello, everyone. I'm Nellie Oki, and I'm both an associate professor at the School of Nursing at UBC Okanagan, but also a co-scientific director with the Rural Coordination Centre of BC. I just want to acknowledge that I am joining you from West Kelowna, so the traditional unceded territories of the Silks people. So just to a quick refresher, RCCVC is, its purpose really is to improve health services for rural and remote populations, including Indigenous peoples that live in rural and remote areas. From a research perspective, RCCVC has a co-scientific director model. So Dr. Dee Taylor is my colleague and partner, and the two of us are working together to build capacity within RCCVC and its many members to promote research activity, but also scholarship and knowledge translation as well. And RCCVC is, has many people that are currently already involved in research, but we have many more potential partners that could be involved, and we operate on the Partnership Plus pentagram, and so have also worked together with industry and not-for-profit citizens, providers, decision makers with different organizations, policymakers, and then academics as well. So where might, just a few things that I heard that might be areas where RCCBC and HRI might connect more so is looking at research questions. I really think that considering that the RCCBC membership exists across Northern BC and in other rural areas, of course, in BC as well, but they would have their own research questions and ideas of what needs to be done. And so connecting, I think, around that would be both clinically and health services wise. The clinical research, I think, again, bodes well for how can we actually do clinical research in rural communities. And again, what ideas and what things are currently happening and what should be happening in that area. Certainly opportunities, I think, for research trainees to do projects within RCCBC. And then lastly, I think from a knowledge translation dissemination perspective, RCCBC would certainly have numerous resources and ways of sharing that information and would want to share research information with their members. I think I'm going to leave it at that and happy to answer any questions.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Nellie. What we're going to do now is to move to the questions. I'm going to, we've got some questions already online. We've got a room of 20 or so people here, and there's more or less, I think there's still about 28 people online. So I'm going to start actually with some of the early questions just to get things going. And what I think we can see is that even those entities that have been here for longer, the HRI, the RCCBC, everybody's trying to figure out, okay, how can we make these synergies happen? And one of the very first questions that came into the chat box early on was actually in relation to one of the first presentations for Kathy and Fraser, which is this idea of, and it's from Bianca Michelle, who's a research manager in Karisakani Family Services. She's an alumni of UNBC, and she's asking a great question. Thank you, Bianca. About, can you speak more about this process of mobilizing information? And it's right at the heart of our challenges across this diverse territory. I'm going to start with you, Fraser, and I wonder if anybody else online, if you're able to put up your hand, any of our panelists online. We will, at the moment, you're in gallery view, so you're sort of around the table with us, Tara, Kathy, and Sterling. And but I'll start with you, Fraser. What do you think about this mobilization challenge?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll speak to it from my perspective and then probably hand over to Julia. But when I began the role, my role is planning, quality, and information management in Northern Health. And so my perspective from the start of this relationship was, I was taking it from a quality improvement standpoint and really trying to think how do you actually move quality improvement forward? And it doesn't take much of a leap of logic to think, well, quality improvement is really taking practices that are proven or learning new practices and trying to understand whether they work or not, and moving them into practice as well. So the question was, or the challenge was around quality improvement for me, which led me to think, not that it's all about me, our organization was on a path of realizing that the relationship with researchers was critical in that. And so how do we move from research, from creation of knowledge into practice? We've done a lot of things within Northern Health. We've created, you can't really accomplish these things if people don't understand the structures and the processes to follow. So we've created communication mechanisms, service networks, so, a pathway from regional leadership through to frontline care to try to facilitate those kinds of conversations. And the biggest challenge is gotten even bigger now, and it's time. To me, what we need to work on and what we could work on together to have the time to reflect on their practice, to look at the leading practices that we're speaking of, or to look at the questions that we're raising for research, and actually have time to investigate those in a rigorous way and implement them. And so to me, that's the nub of mobilizing knowledge, is really, yes, structures, yes, processes, but I think our challenge going forward is going to be time.
Well, thanks, Fraser. We're tight on time tonight, which is, I mean, it's impressive, in fact, that there is so much going on, that even to bring, just to mobilize understanding among the panelists tonight was a really interesting challenge. Do any of the other panelists online have any thoughts about this particular? I'm leaning into the mobilization challenge as it relates to rural and northern contexts. Paul, over to you. I hope the mic will be good enough.
Yeah,
Let us know online if you can't hear him.
I just wanted to add to that, but I think the partnerships, the working better together, is part of the answer to knowledge mobilization. And you know, that's the start. We've been successful in education. I think we need to move that over to research and knowledge mobilization and translation. And we can do that as partners, and we can't do it without being partners and working together.
Thanks, Paul. I think that that's a good reiteration of the importance of the intent here, and what we hope will be the beginning of a series of these kinds of moments, not always at this scope, but on targeted topics. I do have some more question, and I think a really interesting question in the chat box. Bianca says thank you. She found that helpful in response. So there's some nice interaction. Thanks, Bianca. Emma Edmonds is asking, I wonder if we could be given advice about how independent researchers, those that aren't associated with major health or academic institutions, might have equitable access to research supports and data. I'm thinking of us that are working for nonprofit and social service organizations. Such an important question for the kinds of communities that we're serving. So thanks so much, Emma, for asking that question. Anybody want to take an initial thought on that? Julia, great. And put your hand up on online panelists if you've got any thoughts on that.
Great, yeah, thanks for that question. That's a great question. I think it's something we're becoming more aware of at Northern Health and through the other partnerships as well. And a key piece to that is, I think, creating that, again, it comes back to collaboration, but finding people, for example, if you want to, you need access to Northern Health data, to find collaborators within Northern Health that can work with you in designing your research project and phrasing your research project. And by having someone within the health system, they can help enable you to access that data. And then I'd also just point to, this goes way beyond this conversation, but just there's a lot of work being focused on data right now across the province with the health data platform, also been a SCORE initiated initiative. So I think that will bode well in the future for other people accessing data as well from across the system.
Thanks, Julia. And one of the things I just want to pick up on a really important point you were making, Tara, earlier in relation to having the facilitators such as Laura McNabb-Coombs sort of imagining facilitating across this area the size of France, and which is really absolutely extraordinary. And so I'm actually going to take that as a moment to just ask Sterling quite directly. We recognise that the North is underserved. This is something that needs to be stated, and it needs to be stated loudly, especially at this time, given the foundational inequities we face. So I'm really interested in I was so encouraged by the kinds of things you were saying about this could actually be an asset, as well as something, just an inequity to be corrected. So could you speak a little bit more to the vision of how the particular strengths and challenges of Northern BC are going to be hopefully better together under this new envisioning of the way that the Michael Smith Health Research BC is configured? Because there's been some real questions about that in the past, and we're really feeling optimistic about some transitions in the future. So any thoughts on that?
So I mean, a couple of quick ones, because I know that we're really short on time. I think the sort of like positioning of like what are research priorities for the province, and actually engaging in a conversation provincially to understand what those truly are, and actually then responding in earnest to those. I think that listening to the voices from the north will be critical as we actually try to go through that process of understanding priorities. But it's also about what can we do well in BC, like what are we positioned to do well? And I think that needs to be part of the conversation. And I think that actually gives an opportunity for us to really argue strongly for, you know, the positive around rural and remote rather than the negative around rural and remote. So that would be my first comment on that. I had two things, and now the second one has drifted. So I'm gonna, and I know we're short on time. So,
well, you've helpfully reminded us about that time crunch. Those of us that are here together will be able to carry on the conversation and reception shortly. But what I'm going to offer now is just a quick lap around our panelists for any closing remarks or reflections or questions that you're leaving this evening with. They don't have to be long. They could just be one word. We're very eager to allow people to head back into their evenings. But I'm going to, I'm seeing that there are already more questions coming up in the chat box, and please keep them coming because the HRI is really interested in them. And if there are questions that we feel that are unanswered tonight and warrant the focus of a future session or connection or discussion, that would be great fuel coming out of a session like tonight. So I'm going to go in order here. Fraser, any final thoughts or challenges or questions from tonight's interaction?
I'll take your challenge of one word. Excitement is the word that comes to mind. I am really excited about the future of this partnership. I'm expounding, but yeah, that's my word.
Thanks, Fraser.
I think my word is respect. I really feel like there's a real respect for the different roles that people are playing and organizations are playing within this system. And it's great to have these partnerships where people are really valued for the different pieces that they're doing, whether it's operations and that, you know, actually at the forefront on the, or patient partners. And so it's great.
Thanks. Over to you, Paul.
So I think my word is opportunity, and I think there are tremendous opportunities now that lead to Fraser's excitement, and particularly hearing what Sterling has to say as well. I mean, we do have the opportunity to do great rural research, and I think we're really well placed to do that in the north. And actually, there's not that much of it out there, so actually, we can lead this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm going to come around to you, Kathy.
So I have to one up my my co-panelists and come up with two words. So mine is actually, it's hyphenated, end users. So one of the things that I've learned since I've been in this position has been that if we want to mobilize knowledge, the best way to do that is to involve the people who use it at the very beginning. So the people who are actually doing the healthcare and those who are experiencing the healthcare, if we involve them at the very beginning, that not only helps them use that research better when we're finished, but it also improves the quality of the work. So it's end user for me.
Thanks, Kathy. Hyphenated one word, I think you're in. So round to you, Tara, any final thought?
I guess I would just, based on my 3 years within your comment on the power of a network and partnerships, collaborations, communication. Like I literally visualize in BC, like the veins, like I can see them, this web of all of the members, as well as partners, collaborators, funders. And the way we've set up the NEAR and organized it, I can literally, with our registrations, you can ask me right now, like, is there a Métis academic in the Vancouver Musqueam area that focuses on diabetes? And in 1 second, I can go in my database and have like their emails and be like, yeah, do you want me to reach out to them and see if they're interested in having an introductory email, things like that. And that could be somebody that is from far away wanting that connection. So yeah, just the power of a network to mobilize, develop knowledge, and research. I'm really excited to see how the next 3 years, how we keep growing and what comes of it. So thank you. Thanks
so much for being here, Tara. And in case that your final thought came back to you, Sterling, we'll hand over to you for that final word.
It did. So thank you for that. So mine would be learning. And one of the things that I wanted to say actually is that what we're now moving towards is actually building learning into how we allocate research funds in BC, like through Health Research BC. So actually understanding like who's the bias that exists, and like, you know, we shouldn't shy away and say like, you know, we're worried about that. We should actually say we actually want to address that through analytics and through data. So actually like that's work that we're moving forward, and we're part of like collaborative work with other funding agencies to understand how we can identify bias and actually address that bias in the funding decisions.
Well, thank you. I think this, between the words learning, power, end users, excitement, respect and opportunity, that's a pretty good wrap up. An impressive panel, but also a moment to offer some other thank yous. I do want to thank Martha and Nellie also for presenting on behalf of Ray Markham. I know he would have loved to be here. Ray's a real advocate for Northern issues within the RCCBC. And centres, apologies, but thanks so much for being here, Nellie. And by thanking Martha, I'm also wanting to thank our other Health Research Leadership Council members, Sarah, Annie and Shannon. There was others online, people that have stepped off. I really want to make a huge thank you to our the team with the HRI, Leanna Garraway being right in the heart of that as our research manager. With Lisa and Alex and Katie and others who it is teamwork, and I'm inspired by what that can lead to. But also a big thank you to the panelists for bringing that kind of an vigor to this conversation. There is a sense that this is an invigorating time, and there's a lot to be benefited from. We are warmly inviting all of you to come and join. It feels like we're at the brink of reconvening in different ways. There is a small reception over in the admin building. Anybody is welcome that's been with us here. Sorry we can't reach that out to you online, but an enormous thank you all for being here and for marking this beginning of, I think, a really exciting new chapter for health research in Northern BC. Thanks everybody very much, and have a good night.